In the Pits is sponsored by FUAthletics, created with a purpose and focused on building a better you. We are a brand that matters in your workout, and every purchase gives back to cancer research. Go to thefuathletics.com and use code INTHEPITS25 for 25% off of your order. In the Pits is partnered with Get Dat Shot. Get Dat Shot now offers first-in-line photo and video editing, 20% off Get Dat Shot merch, and 20% off prints to all teams that wear the Get Dat Shot logo on their jersey. Message GetDat_shot on Facebook or Instagram to become a Get Dat Shot program team. In the Pits is partnered with Paintball Kumite. Paintball Kumite is a program designed by Colt Roberts of professional team San Antonio X Factor to take paintball players of all ages, experience levels, and skill groups and mold them into champions. The program breaks the game down into small, easy-to-learn sessions designed to help you master the fundamentals so that you can elevate your game. Newcomers to the program get a free 1-hour introductory class when mentioning In the Pits. To sign up for a class, message @PaintballKumite on Instagram. In the Pits is partnered with Compete. Compete is a Texas-based brand by Jill Stewart of professional team AC Diesel that provides custom jerseys, pants, headbands, straps, tech shirts, and any other soft goods to help individuals and teams compete at the highest level. Support Texas Paintball and message Compete on Facebook or Instagram and mention In the Pits Podcast for 10% off your entire order. In the Pits is sponsored by Hustletown Paintball. Hustletown is a brand by Jason Tinsley of Houston that is all about representing Houston paintball and highlighting its local talent. Head to hustletownpaintball.net to browse their selection of casual wear and use code PIT10 for 10% off of your order. Welcome, everybody, to episode 30 of In the Pits Paintball Podcast. This podcast is focused on everything that has to do with the paintball scene here in Texas, from professional players and teams to new divisional programs, local tournament series, field owners, Texas-based brands, even photographers and videographers. Every week, we will have a short and sweet episode with a new topic and a new special guest. I'm Christian Smith. I'm a player for the Texas Titans. In this episode, we are going in the pits with Ryan Brand, coach of pro team San Antonio X Factor and co-owner of Project Paintball. Ryan, how are you doing this evening?
I'm doing good. Thank you for asking. How you doing?
I'm doing great. It's good to have you on. Episode 30. We've been going on for 30 weeks now. Part of me is like, wow, we've made it this far, but super excited for this one. I know you just had a drop go down on Project's website. How did that go for you?
It went well. It sold out like most things do. So it's we're really fortunate that everything's gone really well for us, and a lot of support from the community, and we do spend a lot of time and kind of to ensure that what we're putting out we're really proud of, and I think it's been well received by people, and just kind of we really enjoy it. I'd say me and Archie are probably multiple times a day kind of working on what's next, and just kind of really going over it with a fine-tooth comb, and it's been kind of a blessing that be able to have a successful business come out of paintball on something that we've kind of dedicated our lives to for so long.
Well, it's definitely been well received. I'm seeing especially the TM40s lately. It seems like those things are everywhere now.
Yeah, those did great, and there's 300 of them, so there's 300 of them out there, and that's out there, and we got some more good stuff coming soon. So we're looking like 2023. We probably might have most project markers out there. We're looking at multiple full milled gun releases, hopefully.
Oh, that'll be cool. I'm looking forward to see what else comes out. So let's go ahead and get started. Ryan, for those listening that maybe don't know so much about you, how long have you been involved in the Texas paintball scene?
A long time. Trying to think back. I would say late 90s is when I first started, playing rec ball, and then started probably playing tournaments in Texas sometime around the 2001 time frame, sometimes in there, and then started playing national tournaments in 2003, and kind of been for most of the rest of the time, other than a couple of year hiatus, just kind of doing a lot of paintball.
And that's a very long time to be in the game. So what are some of the team names that you've been under during that time?
So very early on, I think my first 5-man team was called Texas Fire. That was my first we had some whatever beginner tournament stuff I did, but that was my first team that was playing the PAX and PMI series at the time in the early 2000s. So I did that for a little while, and then I got picked up by well, actually, it was kind of the first B-Slap Factory was formed, which later became Smart Parts Factory Team, but that was formed by the Garcia brothers, Gerald and Rich Garcia, who were at the time very early on were playing for Texas Storm when they first started to put the team together. But quickly, Gerald went to Oakland Assassins and went pro, months into him kind of starting that team. And then Richard followed him shortly behind. So that was kind of my first real program of dealing with kind of pro level, coaching, I guess you would say, and ownership. And then those two, they were kind of learning, along the way. So, as they went and started learning from Bob Long, on Oakland Assassins, they were kind of bringing that same kind of some of the knowledge and leadership down to us as kids. And, I was probably maybe 14, 15 years old at the time. So it was, pretty fast and furious. And anyone remembers the two guys, they were hard nosed. Um, I would say closest to probably a Mike Hinman style of coaching, if you're going to compare them to somebody now. So, as a 14 young kid, 15-year-old kid, I think that's really kind of laid a pretty strong impression on me. And then so that was, B-Slap, around the time we won the first ever Bunker Fest. So I think that was probably 2002, I think. Won the 3-man the first day. I think we got second in the 5-man. Probably Crisis Management, which is Brett Cohen, Derek Jordan, Ryan Cohen went on to be X Factor. And so back then, and at that time, Gerald and Richard had played for Texas Havoc before they went over to Storm. And Havoc was playing novice in 10-man. And they kind of were looking mid-year in 2003 to kind of, that was kind of the age of uh, young players, kind of looking inward at kind of picking up some young guys. And most of the Havoc guys were probably in their mid-20s at that time, early 30s. People like Tim Peters, Spencer Boyle, Jeremy Perkins, just a lot of um, old school Texas guys that were a little bit successful. But Havoc was one of the better teams in Texas, but they were probably a tier under Storm and Addicted and stuff like that. So they approached Gerald. We practiced him a lot with B-Slap, and a couple of us went to Chicago in 2003. And that was my first national tournament. And I think I was maybe 16 at the time, somewhere along there. And we went to, made it to the finals, first event and kind of novice 10-man, which was a pretty, back then in 10-man, they just had amateur, it was pro-am, novice, and rookie. So there it was a pretty big jump from local Texas tournaments to that. And I'd had a lot of success on B-Slap. We won pretty much everything in the novice division back in the PAX and PMI days. So we were, I would say we were winning probably 90% of the tournament. So I was doing a lot of winning early on, but then going to the national stage, it was just a big eye opener. But the competition level was significantly different. So yeah, we went to the finals in Chicago there, and the team. It was us, Mama's Boys, and Justice were the three teams kind of going at it the mid-year back then, and those are some iconic programs for people that have been around that long. And then the next event in Philly went to the finals again. I think we got third, maybe in both of them. Mama's Boys and Justice were both really strong teams. Um, and then after that is when we decided as B-Slap to start playing national tournaments. So we played World Cup in 2003 and made it to the finals again where we played Pag Factory Team, which is better known now as Edmonton Impact. So that was the Yakimiks, Josh Omelette, Bart Yakimick was playing at that time. We lost to them there too. So a lot of success early on in the national stage, but no wins
Mm.
kind of in that time frame. And then at that point, BSOP turned into the Smart Parts Factory team. We did that for a few years, and at the end of 2005, I went to X Factor.
And you've pretty much just been there ever since, give or take the couple of stints with the infamous 10-man guys.
Yeah, it's been my home, and never really yeah, it's kind of been my squad, and definitely it's weird. I've gotten offers over the years, and you know more frequent over the past couple of years to pursue some other opportunities, but to me, kind of X Factors, it's family, and it's just not really. It's kind of a weird one, like it's I played my whole career, my whole pro career there. I've coached, aside from in Europe, my whole career there, and I would be lying if I said I didn't have curiosity of what it would be like to work with another group of guys and do that. But end of the day, like X Factor for me is it's just part of me, and um, I can't really see myself leaving.
Yeah, we got similar sentiments from Colt Roberts on the very first episode of the show. He was just like, for him, it was a lot about like local pride and how he just believes in his squad and ride or die basically with this group of guys. And it's a little interesting to see because especially right now with the offseason in the NXL, you're seeing a lot of pretty big moves. Even last thinking back to last year's offseason, you had all of the Latin Saints stuff where a lot of these big name players went to the Saints and then immediately, after the first event, they had to find new homes and scattered amongst different teams. But X Factor was pretty stable during that time. And a lot of guys coming in. Yes, Archie went over to Dynasty, but then, you picked up Sean, you picked up Anthony, Cody was healthy, you solidified Tom Guest. And it seems like X Factor seems to be a place that a lot of players, like when they get here, they just want to stay.
Yeah, I'd say that I do a lot of the general managing as well, and I would say that we luckily have a pretty good reputation of a good place where players want to play. We're not a big money team, but I would say we're still probably in the higher, 2/3 as far as budget. So we do have access to be able to handle those types of things. And everyone just knows, and it's been, the praises have been sung for so long now that like Alex is just a straight up, great person and human. And I think people want to feel comfortable. And when you're talking to, these upward, higher level pros, they want to go to a place where they know that if they make an agreement, it's going to be upheld no matter what. There's just not going to be any BS or anything like that. And especially kind of the whole Saints situation has amplified that a little bit, where people are, I think, even going forward, are going to be a little bit more wary of um, situations that maybe seem too good to be true, or just a bit of a leap. So people around the league, they know, you know, a lot of them know me because I've been, a staple in coaching for so many seasons. So they kind of know what they're getting there, and then they know Alex, and a lot of our guys are. It's known as that we're a serious team, but we like to have a good time as well. And we've been competitive for so long, and maybe not the. It's last year was probably the only time that we had some inconsistency as far as not competing in an event, or at least not having a chance to win for a long time. And so, um, me, it's like it's not a hard conversation to try to convince someone to come to our team. It's usually fielding a lot of people trying to come and having to kind of break the news that we're full. We can only roster so many people.
Mm. Well, that's a good problem to have, if anything, especially in pro division as competitive as it is now. Someone in the chat during your story about your come up the through the climb up to the top, he's saying 14-year-old kids then were built different from 14-year-old kids now. It seems that way. I mean, there are every now and then, especially recently with kids that the ML Kings have picked up, and the Ironmen have got some young kids that have just made splashes on the Pro League. But it seems like, you hear it a lot on Go Sports with Matt Marshall and a couple of like other podcasts out there, like Ryan Greenspan's, how they're talking how the Pro League is getting older and there's not really that much young talent coming in to replace them nearly as often as there used to be.
Yeah, to that comment of 14-year-old kids aren't built the same, I absolutely see that more often than not. But then it just seems like, with social media, like occasionally you'll just see a kid pop up and he's a 10-year-old kid running around with shooting 68 caliber, running at pro players. And it's like, okay, so they're still out there. I just think they're maybe a little bit fewer and further, far apart. And, a lot of it probably comes down to parenting. I mean, I'm a parent myself, and like the stuff that I got away with, and out and bumps and bruises and just fending for myself as a young child, and that I couldn't dream of allowing my kids to go out and do is probably, for better or worse. It's an upbringing thing that kids just aren't as tough early on, in my opinion. So it's an interesting thing, but um, back when I was a kid, getting shot to hell wasn't that big of a deal because I, bombed a hill on my bike 100 times, like covered in blood, coming home at 9 p.m. at night, stuff like that. So I just felt like, you got to get toughened up, and I think the kids were a little bit more tough back then.
Yeah, it's a different world now with all the like technology and stuff. I mean, as an elementary school teacher, I see it firsthand, and I think most of it is just how nowadays kids are growing up with a tablet in their hands is really just the bottom line. They're doing more things digitally than there are like going out and experiencing them. But it's a shame, but there are the kids out there, like you said. I mean, look at how New York Wrecking Crew did in D3 this year. Most of that roster is like under 16 years old, and they're killing it.
Mhm. Yeah,
So
absolutely. They're out there, and I think it seems like there's more of it now than there has been in the past 5 or 6 years. So,
absolutely. So Ryan, tell us about how you first got into paintball.
um, so for me, it's kind of a weird one. I wasn't a birthday party kid like most people. I had a buddy, and he had an old Smart Parts catalog. So it was um, something you would pick up at a dealer, or sometimes if you purchase a gun, it would come in there. So, but all it really was is it would have barrels, different anodized barrels and grips, and a couple guns and different this, and there just wasn't too much to it. But I got a hold of this thing, and I would just obsess over it and flip through it, you know, all the time, and just obsess over it. And I was always trying to get my parents to let me get a paintball gun, let me get a paintball gun. And at the time, I didn't even know there was such thing as paintball fields, so I just was trying to get a gun. And after a lot of convincing, and this probably went on for well over a year. I grew up on quite a bit of land, and my dad had you know, bought some paintball guns, and him and his old business partner, came over and me and my brother, and we played 2-on-2 um, back in the field. And it was one of these things that I don't know how I was maybe like 11 at the time, something like that, 12, and we it's just way too big of an area for 2-on-2. So we built our little fort, me and my brother, and they hunted us, and it probably went on for 2 hours that we never even saw each other. And then, me and my brother finally got out of our fort, went looking for them. And then, we never found them. So, and we're getting like heat exhaustion. We were in these giant like overalls, so it wouldn't hurt or anything like that. It was just Texas summer. Finally made our way back to our fort, and my dad and his business partner had gotten in our fort, waited for us, and just shot the living hell out of us. Um, and so my first experience with paintball was like, heat exhaustion, didn't see anybody, walk around the woods, and got shot like 15 times, never pulled the trigger, and I was hooked. It was like amazing. So it was just one of these things like I think one of these people that was just built for it, for the obsession in any way I found it, no matter what the experience was, I was gonna fall in love. So that was my first time, and from there, my dad found out that there was rec ball fields, and we just kind of started doing that thing for a little bit, and it just progressed over time.
Oh, geez, starting out, I don't know if I would have been quite as hooked with that same experience. I think I might have just gone home after that. But
Yeah.
man, what a story! That's awesome. And so being in the scene for so long, I mean, you started out, you said you started playing rec ball in what, like 1999, and then eventually
Yeah,
getting into
something like that.
tournaments shortly after that. So you've been in the scene for, close to 25 years at this point. Um, so this next question is sponsored by Hustletown Paintball. Head to hustletownpaintball.net. Use code PIT10 for 10% off of your order. So what are some things that you've noticed that have changed within the Texas scene for better or for worse over that time period?
So like in my personal experience, like it's definitely kind of been a hills and valleys to it, to where when I was first playing local tournaments, the PAX and the PM, there was two big series, and almost three, and then you had Bunker Fest coming as well for their once a year event, and it was a big kind of traveling show that kind of similar to what we have with the USXBL now. But there's two of them, right? Competing, and there's tournaments all the time, and different places. It wasn't going to the same fields all the time, so we would have a tournament. Padre Island was like the big one every year, and it was kind of moving all over the place. And then there was a lot of other smaller series that were also competitive and going on, the XCPL and all sorts of things. And so there was just a lot of options, a lot of opportunity, multiple divisions of competitiveness. And then at some point, it's hard for me to say, because just like I think these days a little bit, like especially back then, like you start playing national tournaments and then you were pretty much done with the local scene. And especially if you started playing, like, once you start playing amateur, it was similar to days, like there's just not that many open tournaments, right? So you kind of get phased out. So I didn't have my finger too much on the pulse, but it did seem that like those series ended for whatever reason, and there wasn't something in my recollection that stepped in right away. And the kind of regional scene of Texas seemed to kind of really fade, for a while. And especially like multiple, maybe there's some stuff in Dallas and there's some stuff in Austin, but it just seemed like once those series kind of fell off, and some stuff in Houston, but it was all kind of separated. Um, and it would be hard for me to know exactly when the shift happened. You with the US, is it USXBL now?
Yes.
It might have been AXBL at some
Y-
point when it started to come back.
yeah.
And I don't know what year, maybe that's 2010, 11. I have no idea, but it seemed like it was really small at first. And then it just started to kind of build and build and build to what we have now, which is a little bit more, reminiscent to what was there in 2003, 2002. But it seemed like there was at a certain time there it was kind of a lot of these scenes had really kind of died off. Probably similar to paintball in general in that 2008, 9, 10,
Mhm.
recession.
Yeah. We have definitely seen the scene like continuing to grow in the last couple of years. I mean, it did start in like kind of that 2010 to 2012 era when the AXBL, they started coming back. They started building up their teams, and eventually the name switched to USXBL. I'm not entirely sure what was the reasoning behind that, but now there's a lot more local scenes, and there's just tournaments going on all the time, especially up at Fit nowadays, because they've got basically 3 or 4 different whole series that they only host there, because they've got the XTPL, they've got Frostbite, which is run by Greg Pauly, they've got the Mech X Ball stuff that they do, and then of course the USXBL events themselves. So you've got just constant tournaments that are going on, and now I think in Texas anyway, that's why you're seeing so many like Division 5 teams all the time, is because there's just availability everywhere. And especially at, like, if you look in the last 2 to 3 years, X Factor's had numerous programs start up. When I'd say like 2017, 2018, 2019, there was really, it was like Grit, Dragoons had been there for a while. Ruthless has been coming in and out. Austin Chaos kind of merged with Grit, and then that was it. But now you've got like 10 different programs there. So it's cool to see how the scene is building up, and not just like on a statewide, but also like kind of local, more like city scenes have really been building up. And it's turning into a bit of an arms race here in Texas. Like Houston has exploded. They've got a couple new fields, a couple of Division 3, Division 2 teams competing, and same thing at X Factor. And then, of course, FIT has teams from top to bottom.
Yeah, it's great, and I think FIT really kind of set the model as far as having all these tournaments, and JD's been having tournaments since I've been playing, right? So, and it's one of these situations that you give people a reason to form teams, a reason to play, and an opportunity to win. Everything's a lot better, right? You get a little taste of winning, then you'll get hooked a little bit more, and you can start building these programs and these teams. Where if it was just the USXBL, there's only 2 or 3 divisions, so how many to take a new team, a beginner team, and say they're going to win right away? It's very difficult. So I think it's great what they're doing up there, and I think it's kind of the proof is in the pudding now that um, it's great for paintball as a whole. And I know like X Factor, when you were kind of looking, now, they're running kind of a local small events, Expo, series and stuff like that. And I think that's a little bit of kind of watching, what happened at FIT and saying, hey, like let's try to do the same, and not as like a financial money making thing, but just like for the good of like we need more teams. We want more players. Like we want to be better for um, the scene here in San Antonio. So we're looking to try to do more of that. It's a lot of work, and I kind of tip my hat to JD and team because it's a lot of work to do those things because a lot of those smaller tournaments, it's not like they're making you tons of money.
Yeah, it definitely takes a huge amount of work. But another reason why I think that you're seeing this big buildup is now that we've had like, essentially 3 pro teams in Texas for a couple of years now, you're seeing that these local pro players are getting more involved with divisional programs, and they're trying to like kind of build their own legacy. It started with obviously the FIT guys. They've had Mark Johnson and Ben Challenger, and all of those guys have been involved coaching in all the different FIT teams. Last year, the Titans were lucky enough to have you for our very first event in USXBL coaching us. And then we've had guys like Nico Hyde with the Austin Hypnotic Camp, Devin Stewart with I think he's with Outlaw Anodizing over in Houston. Even, Samotrov was with the Texas Cyclones for a while. So all of these pro teams kind of building up with these divisional programs so that they can do it the right way. I think it's keeping these players, not just like getting them invested, but they're also staying in the game longer because they know that they're kind of doing it the right way from the ground up.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it also, having interaction with these guys and just in general, just the teams being there gives all these players a pathway of something to aspire to. And not only that maybe one day they can make it on one of those teams, but I mean, shoot, one day their team could be a pro team. It's pretty incredible that, me growing up, that wasn't even a thought, right? Like it just wasn't even a possibility. It was, you wanted to be on a pro team, you had to go make another pro team. That was the pathway back then. I spent a whole summer, going back and flying back and forth to Philly, like practicing with the All Americans back then, because that's what I was trying to do before X Factor became a pro team. And and then we did it, but it's been so long, right? So like Alex made it happen, but that was in 2006. So for a long time there, it's like is it really possible for another team to come up and do it? And then AC Dallas made it happen, and then AC Diesel made it happen, and now you have Notorious, made it happen from. And I guess I would say that same thing for AC Dallas, but like probably took that from a D3 team or something
Mhm.
to a pro team over the course of 5 or 6 seasons, and um, Austin Notorious has took a D3 team, D4 team to now a pro team over the course of 5 6 seasons. Like it's pretty. Those stories don't exist that often, if that makes sense. Like you only get at best you're getting one of those stories a year, um, and often it's not like that. Something else happens or whatever. So the fact that we've had three of them happen out of Texas in the past, I don't know, 8 years is pretty incredible.
Oh yeah. I'm just glad you brought that up with Notorious. I mean, they went from playing D3, having a bunch of D3 players. They immediately win the D2 season as soon as they jump to D2, and then they immediately win the semi-pro season and win the pro spot as soon as they jump to semi-pro. So that kind of leap is just unreal, and it's not a unique story by any means. I mean, you've got a lot of guys like Logan Dyer, and who's the new kid on Diesel that just played for them at Cup? Also just came up from
Hansel.
Logan
Logan
Hansel.
Hansel.
You've got stories like that happening all the time now, and it's cool to see. And I think everybody else in Texas, they're like, oh, that's gonna be us soon. So that's why you're seeing
That's
this huge
awesome.
arms race and a whole like buildup of D3, D2 programs that's happening right now. They're looking to come climb their way to the top.
Yeah, I mean it's incredible, and it's probably like in California, right? Like you could say like there's you know getting on Aftermath, and there's gonna be a whole youth resurgence and stuff. But other than that, it's like when's the last time a team from California became a new pro team? You look at the other major market. When's the last time a team from Florida became a new? I guess the King. I mean they were formed and kind of grandfathered in, honestly, from
Yeah.
the Prague version of Kings. So it's like the fact that it's all Texas is doing it, which is awesome, and obviously like this last year was so tight that a Midwest team almost did it, and or another Texas team, if it was those three teams, the separation was so minimal that you could say they all three earned or deserved it, or deserve an opportunity more so than expansion that took place 3 or 4 years ago. So but yeah, I think Texas is a great place. Like if I'm someone playing on Tribe or Shut Up or the Titans or anything like that, like I'm looking at it like, oh shit, like this, if we stick together and keep dedicating ourselves to this, like we might be able to do this. Like it's a pretty cool thing that if you would have asked me that question 7 years ago, 8 years ago, like could another Texas, is there going to be another Texas pro team? I would say no chance. Like it's just not. It was different back then. We only had 12 proteins total. At that time in 2012 or whatever it was. So that it's changed a lot, but I think it's more healthy, right? That there's opportunities to reach the top more so than just the best player out of your state gets a shot on dynasty or something one day. So
Mhm.
it's cool. It's healthy.
Yeah, it's exciting to see, and shoot, I bet I'd be willing to put money by this time next year that Fit's going to join the pro team, and then we're going to have 4 Texas teams, and maybe even 5 after that, pretty soon after. So it's cool to
Yeah,
see
it's
all of
it's
the talent
so
coming out.
I agree, but it's just so treacherous. Like semi-pro, winning a pro spot, I don't think people realize how difficult it is and the trajectory of like. You look at like the Mutiny. Who'd they go toe to toe with one year
Aftermath, I
and
think
just
it
lost
was.
out? And Aftermath, right? So the Mutiny Aftermath, and I think that came down to like half a percentage point or something like that.
Hmm.
And then that, for whatever reason, was kind of like a death blow to Mutiny, right? Like they haven't been close ever since. And I tip my hat that it seems like Last Camp and Fit are both kind of loading up and dedicating themselves, and they're going to go back at it head to head. But at the end of the day, unless a team folds or something, that one of those teams isn't going to make it again. And I mean, it's a hard thing to do, and when you look at semi-pro, it often comes down to consistency. It's not necessarily winning 1 or 2 or 3 events. It's how bad did you F up when at the tournament
Mhm.
you missed the cut at or something like that. It's one of those, um, situations where there's not a lot of room for error, and the amount of pressure on that is pretty crazy. As pro teams right now, it's like there's a lot of pressure as far as like you miss a cut like to us like we hadn't missed a cut in God no I don't know like 8 9 years or something. And so the missing a cut was pretty devastating, right? To that streak and just kind of unknown territory for us. But I can only imagine missing a cut in semi-pro and just knowing that like the rest of your season might be for naught just because you had one bad showing, and so it's pretty treacherous.
Oh yeah, I mean, a lot of people love to bring up that Blast Camp won 3 events this year. Or two or three events this year, and they deserve the pro spot. But no one brings up how they also got a 10th place at the first event, and then they didn't make Sunday at Cup, and those kinds of things will just kill you. And
Well, yeah, they'll kill you, but I think like you look at like everyone's sitting there after Damage's season, like, hey, they won a tournament, a minor, they got second at World Cup. You know, they're saying they're looking at them like they're one of the best teams in the world, right? Well, in Chicago, I think they got like 17th place.
mm,
Like if you do that in semi-pro, like that's curtains for you. That was third from last place, and so it's interesting that it's definitely I think one up, one down might just not be enough to be realistic of getting the best team out there. Um,
yeah.
that's just the way I see it.
It'd be interesting to see if that system changes, especially just to bring up the Latin Saints again. I think it's fair to say, like, after that first event when they lost their whole roster, they got last in the next 3 events, and then at Cup they had to bring in CEP to win a match. So we'll see what happens with that squad. Uh,
Yeah.
so so Ryan, you started out originally as a player for the X Factor organization, but in around 2010, 2011 or so, you became the coach. What made you transition into coaching duties?
So mainly was at the I was in college and through my whole pro career with X Factor, and I think at the around the end of the 2007 season, early 2008, it was getting a bit like challenging, right? As far as trying to balance the two. And I made a decision to step away. A decision like I can openly say I regret now. But at the time, it's something where I just, you're giving up a lot in those years. We were carrying a very big roster at the time, and for me, a mix of being one of the newer guys, one of the last guys on the team when we went pro, some injuries, having to miss a tournament due to a professor having zero wiggle room on a final. Those types of things, like it was always a challenge for me. Um, you know, maintaining like a starting spot or even like initially earning one took a while, and then when I got one, it was just a kind of a knock of something just kept happening, and it was really difficult on me. And then you focus that in on you're missing a lot on the college experience because your life is paintball at that point, especially us. We were practicing every weekend back then, um, and um, and just kind of really kind of had my separated focus. So I stepped away. I played a tournament with X Factor in 2009, but for the most part, I was, you know, kind of uh, not involved with paintball, and I really it was more so of a regret of like I couldn't even look to perfectly be honest. Like I couldn't even watch because I kind of regret. I made my decision kind of hastily after we lost the tournament that I was going to be done, and then I was like, I got to stick with my decision or whatever. So I lived with Grayson all through the rest of college, and so he was on X Factor. I was with the team all the time, all around it, but I couldn't even like make my way out to practice more often than not. So after I got done with school, kind of got established in my career, um, I was kind of, Archie kind of got me back to kind of wanted me to come out and kind of just be part of the team. I think initially wanted me to come out and sideline coach back when that was a thing. And, I agreed to do so. And, I kind of quickly fell back in love with the sport, but I definitely didn't want to feel like I was going to commit as much time as now. I was thinking that coaching was going to be coaching was different back then.
Mm.
Like not even like a lot of teams didn't even have coaches back in 2010, 11. So I did not. I thought coaching at the time when I agreed to coach was going to be like a five, maybe like 5 practice days a year in the tournament. Like that was my intention. But obviously, it quickly spiraled into a full on thing where I'm investing more time in the players. So if I could have done it back over again, I would have just came back and played. But I came back and coached. I did fall in love with coaching. I really enjoyed having influence like on every point rather than um, especially coming from the point where when I was fighting for playing time for a lot of my career, being able to kind of have a really important role in the direction of the team. And kind of it's just the story goes from there. And so it's just been kind of a labor of love a little bit as coaching, but I would say nothing really beats playing paintball at the same time.
Mhm. And so let's talk about like those responsibilities as the coach. I mean, a lot of people, their perception of a coach is like, hey, you're just going to draw up the X's and O's. You're going to draw the breakouts, call the plays. You're going to call who the five are on the field. But as far as your responsibilities with X Factor are, what all do you do as the coach?
Well, I guess like for me specifically, this is probably not all coaches have this, but like I have a Alex is a very busy man, and I would say the majority of the general managing of the team falls on my shoulders as well. So that's as far as like managing the roster, all those types of things is something that I'm tasked with to kind of keep everything going. Scheduling practices, really everything to kind of like those types of things are things that I run alongside being the coach. And Alex is very supportive and has input on everything, but it's definitely like that's kind of I'm the first line when it comes to those types of things. And then when we go into coaching, it's obviously there's the X's and O's, but I have a lot of responsibility as far as organizing strategy, um, just kind of organizing everything, kind of like teaching, right? Learning from the players, figuring out how we want to attack a field, kind of organizing the path going into it, structuring practices, being a little bit of the team therapist as well. Of you get a lot of el- elite paintball players that often are type A alpha type people at that high like pro level or a mixture of just and honestly just a mixture of personality types and a lot of it is me trying to help everyone mesh together and then also just helping make sure everyone's comfortable in the situation and able to bring to the field the best version of themselves.
A question I have there is on X Factor anyway. You have a lot of the top talent from across the country. Um, how are you, or what things are you doing, if you have anything that you can share, in terms of player development? Like, are you helping these? Because I know you mentioned the word teaching. Are you working on improving the players that you do have, or are they pretty much just coming to you as they are?
Well, so that's kind of a difficult. It's per the player, right? Like there's not so much of me teaching Colt Roberts to play paintball anymore, but there's a lot of me having a different perspective than Colt and being able to be outside the net and you know have a 300-foot view to kind of put my perspective on top of what he's seeing behind the gun and putting together the best way to do something. Now, when we have a younger player come in to the program, there's definitely some more teaching moments, right? With Anthony, I had more teaching moments and some of the stuff coming up. But I'll also say, like, working with someone like, with Billy is, um, Billy's really evolved his game over the past 5, 6 seasons, and that was a lot of me challenging him, right? And that's because the snake position in paintball as a whole changed. Where Billy's spent the first decade of his career as someone that was he would run, face first at the snake and dive in and start crawling, point after point after point. So if you look at it, Billy played a whole decade where he didn't gun battle somebody, but on his belly, or from snake beam to snake beam. So we had to work together, and to Billy's credit, he's the one that did all the hard work, but like working on learning how to evolve his game as a snake player to where now it's a lot of the layouts like you're running to the first bunker out and having to fight your way out, and so that's an ongoing learning process that he's really, that's why his game, that's why he's one of the best now, because he's attacked that and done that. But it's a lot of like those types of things. As far as like teaching moments too, is that I'm the one that does the heavy lifting when it comes to like watching film and those types of things, and so I have to um, see what other players are doing, what other teams are doing, and kind of um, teach that to my team and get them on the same page and those types of things. And everyone knows their own little piece and brings it all together. But for me, it's that's kind of a lot of it is just doing a little bit of the extra work so the players can focus more so on their game and not on all the other things out there.
Gotcha. There's definitely a lot there, and I know that you're not the only one doing it. I know you have help, like from Alex from Dixon as well. Who? So how does that? At least here, let's phrase it at least in terms of, let's say you're at the event. So when it comes down to being at the field, either on the field or maybe you're getting ready for playing the next day, how do those responsibilities break down in terms of how you prepare?
So for me, like the at the there's two ways that to not give away too much, but like scouting at the field and scouting on Go Sports are both advantageous. Like they're both beneficial in their own ways. And so Dixon handles a lot of the on-field scouting, like at the field, and I do a lot of some at the field, a lot at night, utilizing Go Sports, and we kind of break it up that way. And then also in the middle of a match, often in our brackets, like we're playing a match at the same time as the other teams in our bracket are playing. So there's too much going on for me to try to scout that match and coach our game. So Dixon's picking up a lot of that. Um, During like breakouts, like I'm often watching the other team, Dixon's watching our team. It's getting an extra set of trustworthy, knowledgeable eyeballs that that person also knows what the hell they're talking about. So you can lean on it because things go fast, especially when you're like field level with the team on a breakout. Like I've had other people try to help and as like spot where people are going, and I'll get the scout sheet and then I'll go back and like review it at night, and it's like 80% wrong. And especially with these new big bunkers, so you got to know where to stand because sometimes and actually understand the game too, because there's times where the whole Dorito side's blocked out from where we're at. So you have to almost be able to read the other team's breakout to be able to infer where they actually went off the break until it actually they come into the line of sight. So that's kind of how we break things up there, and just all sorts of stuff. Like there's like paint, which is honestly like I hate the fact that it is such a determining factor in the sport, because I just wish that was like a hey, you all use the same paintball or whatever. It's just a uniform thing. It isn't the case. Luckily, we have a great GI has the most paint and so we have so much great paint to choose from. So I do feel they have an advantage there, but it's a lot of work for me to how to maintain the paint, how to make sure we have the right paint. Um, it's very difficult to test paint during the tournament because you know where to shoot it. There's all sorts of things that adds a whole nother layer of extra work I have to get done. But that is something that I don't really trust with other people because it is such a big part of it.
Mm.
And also at the same time, like it just gives my players know how serious I take it, and it gives them confidence that when they're out there, we're shooting the best thing that is available to us. So it's like I don't want my guys like paints bouncing and they're like, we should have used another lot or the paints or any of that kind of stuff. Like I want them to be confident that if we're bouncing people, it's the best thing we could. So that's just not something that they're going to be dwelling on because it's not really helpful. You know, it's not helpful for thought when you want your guys thinking about things that are actually going to make them better or more prepared if they're thinking about our paint isn't as good as it could be, should we be grabbed by a lot. So I shoulder that's a responsibility that teams should take very seriously and how to maintain your paint, all that kind of stuff. But um, it's something that I would say it's a bit of a bane of my existence of having to be at the paint truck so much. If you're looking to find me at a tournament, I'm probably at the paint truck as much as I'm at in the bleachers. So
Yeah, it's crazy just how much goes into winning a tournament. I know,
mhm.
like for you, and something that we learned from you was the art of scouting a team. Which now that I've had more and more experience on the tournament side, has played a bigger and bigger part in our game plans. So tell me a little bit more about your coaching style. So would you say that you have like a specific style to how you coach or how you play call, or is it largely just based on how your roster is?
um, I think I have an advantage over some coaches. Just like the coaches that have a better teams, right? Like we're able to coach from we have more room for error, right? Because
Mhm.
and I if I have something that's not working, I can get out of a bad mathematical percentage to win a point scenario by just restarting it, and then I have a good team that I know that they can kind of bail me out of it. So that's an asset I have at my disposal. But my coaching style, it is very much. I would say my style is based on feel and analytics of what I think the other team is going to do. Um, and then I think it's and that I think also makes us less scoutable because we're not calling plays in any type of system or cadence of like we do this and it works so we do it again or stuff like I'm constantly trying to predict what's going on the other side of the field and trying to be as unpredictable as possible on our side and also set ourselves um, to shoot people off the break over there and to get tells off the gate, all sorts of things. So it's definitely like I'm trying to be one step ahead. That's the way I look at coaching is that you just want it's whoever gets that edge of having the other person kind of second guessing what they're doing, and if you kind of get to where they're start moving their pieces around um, to try to get out alive. And if you're able to know them as a coach or know the kind of decisions, you can then predict, you know, how they're going to react. And then if you can um, continue to be one step ahead, then you can really get your team a huge advantage because I mean, off the break is it's just huge. It really is. It's just such a crucial part of the game. And to me, it's just my job is there to try to get my team advantage, try to get them out alive, and try to put them in a spot where they have a high likelihood that wherever they're shooting, there's someone running to that lane.
I mean, all of those things that like scouting, breakouts, trying to, get tells or tendencies, and, especially the paint and managing all of that, all of those things translate to bodies. And uh, anyone who has had effective coaches or great coaches know that when all of those things add up, that can, that makes your job a whole lot easier when you're playing 5-on-4 or even 5-on-3 off the break, and just translate to so many more wins. So This next question comes to us from Paintball Kumite, which is Colt Roberts' program. Message him on Facebook or Instagram and mention In the Pits for a free 1 hour intro class. So as a coach, what are some things that you do to improve your craft? And do you have any advice that you can give to any like aspiring coaches that are out there?
So improving my personal craft, it comes on two things. It's about understanding, doing the hard work, and understanding the other teams and programs, and it's also doing the hard work and understanding my players, and also doing my best to remove my ego and being willing to accept my own mistakes, my own failures, and learn from them, so I can better myself as well, and kind of know that every single one of my ideas is never going to be the best idea, right? So I have to be able to kind of look at inward of my team and be open to other perspectives and concepts as well, even if I, fully believe in one of my own. So those are kind of the things I think early on as a coach, you know, it's weird. You just like, I feel like I was less confident when I first started, naturally, but I also felt like I had to be more hard nosed and I was more stubborn in what I was trying to get done. Um, and then now that I'm very confident in what I'm doing, I'm able to kind of take a step back as well and be more open to um, oh, criticism or even just like or self criticism or outward and try to make sure that I have the right plan, the best interest of what we're doing out there. Um, that's it. As a player can make a bad play and cost your team the point or a match. Like I can call a bad play and I have, right? And done the same. So I think once you can do that, and I think some coaches probably don't take that perspective as far as they're just if you lose, it was the player's fault. You had the plan, they didn't execute. And that's just, in my opinion, incorrect. And so once you can shed that ego, you can be more effective.
Got it. So, in addition to your, all of your hats that you wear with X Factor, on top of that, you're also the co-owner of Project, which has very quickly risen to become one of the premier private labels in paintball for all sorts of products and goods. So, started out with soft goods like this hoodie that I'm wearing. You've got some tech tees, barrel socks, and now joggers and headbands with a collab with Hormesis, and now all the way up to unique millings on markers. And a couple episodes ago, we heard from Archie and his experience with Project. Tell us about your experience with starting this brand.
Yeah, I mean, it's honestly, it's been amazing. I think we right before COVID is kind of when things started to kind of really get there. At the time I was officing out of the same building with my company that Archie was, and so we were spending a lot of time, daily, kind of like kicking around ideas. And Archie had been, um, for a long time customizing some of his own guns, and it's just that's been something he's always wanted to do. And we both grew up in an era of where having your own flair, was a thing, and coming up with new trends. And with BKIT, that's honestly how BKIT started. Was we would back when those 5-man series of PAX PMI were going on, that we were a group of kids on a bunch of other teams, and we would do things like I think one event, like there was probably 20 of us in BKIT mixed around 10 different local teams, and just on the internet forum, like let's wear like collared shirts under our jerseys. And so you go to this tournament and there's 200 people there, but 10 of us are wearing like a collar under our jersey that like says BKIT on it. And just we would do these things. We started um, we're wearing the bandana craze is something that we kind of started back then. We're all doing that. Tall tees was, there was a couple of guys in trauma doing that, but X Factor we really kind of stuck and run with it. And then everyone was wearing ridiculous tall tees under their jerseys for years and years to come with stuff written on it. And that's the writing came from X Factor and the BKT squad. So being kind of individuality and that kind of stuff was a big part of paintball back in the early 2000s. And then I think it happened probably the introduction of team sponsorship, um,
Mhm.
packages and that kind of stuff. Like paintball got really standardized, and then in the 2008 recession, a lot of the smaller companies went away, and so then it was a lot of the big manufacturers, and they weren't making as much of like smaller run, small products. So we were looking at paintball, and it was like very like cookie cutter of like this is a dye team, and they all have the same blue dye stuff on head to toe, and this is, Empire team, and they all have the same yellow Empire stuff head to toe, and so we're kind of seeing that there was kind of a hole for that, and something like we thought paintball had lost a little bit of its like skater lifestyle heart that was kind of what made it cool and appealing when we were growing up. It lost its individuality and kind of a little bit of its swagger. So in that office space, and it's right before COVID, we were really, started to design the Project G, paintball gun and having conversations of what to do and going back and forth. And, Archie's the one of the two of us that really kind of was like, what's through this design? This is the way to do it. I mean, he pushed through that project, and that was, really successful. And at the same time, for years, I kind of had this concept that it's kind of funny, but I wanted to make a high-end headband company, and I probably had been pitching this idea to friends since like 2018, 2017, and the whole concept was it was going to be like no branding. I was going to pay certain pro players to wear it, and not announce anything with it, and then all the top pros are wearing the same headband. And then like a year into it, I was going to announce what it was. And then around, that had shifted a little bit. And then me and Archie were staying at my lake house. And then one morning I woke up, and, I was just on my phone. I took a shower, and then there was the first Hormesis drop. And I was already like in this, like, hey,
Mhm.
the next thing we're going to do is these headbands. And like, I'm looking, I go to Archie, I'm like, well, Alex and Oliver just fucking crushed it. And I was just like, well, we're going to have to pivot what the next product's going to be, because I don't want to jump into this. And it was just kind of funny that I think me and Archie and Alex and Oliver at the same kind of time were thinking the same way. And both because, they've been playing a few years longer than us, but like that the sport needed this new, um, you know, swagger behind it. So from there, we shifted away from headbands into our own thing. We started making long sleeves, um, and then we started making tanks, barrels, more guns, just all sorts of stuff. Sweatshirts. Like we really like to where we're at that we can work with a bunch of different manufacturers and put our own twist on products, right? And kind of go in like where we have a lot of fun is in the design phase, so it's like even um getting to work with anodizers right now, and just getting our hands into put our little uh small touches on a design to make it just a little bit more individual. And that's why we keep things really small and limited run too, because we want when someone buys something like, you're wearing that you know, hoodie you're wearing right now.
Mhm.
I think there's only 80 of them, made, right? And there will only ever be 80 of them. And we want someone to buy something from us and know that, hey, only 30 of these are made, only 60 of these are made, and be able to kind of cherish that. It's like um, something that they have and it's cool, and you don't want to just toss it aside and forget about it, because not only is it a limited thing that's not going to be made again, but more often than not, you had to get online and fight with a couple hundred other people to have a chance to actually purchase it. And a lot of our products, they retain a value that I think is really cool. That people that were first supported us and bought a Project G and in back in 2020, I think when we got them, maybe 2021, um, and have used that thing ever since. And they bought it from us for 1750, I think is what the initial one sold for. Well, that gun's worth $2,400 now or more, with 100,000 shots on it. So being able to kind of be in this ecosystem with our customers to where we've kind of curated Um, the quantities we take, we're really that's where we have a lot of intent in that we want our customers to not only be able to something that they want to use and they want to like cherish, but also like hell, if they can have something that retains value and they make some money down the road too, like that's a win-win for me.
It's funny that you brought up that story with how Hormesis kind of got started right when you're trying to come up with this exact same idea. Similar idea anyway.
Mm.
And I'm thinking back to this like 2017, 2018, 2019, kind of the state of the paintball scene. And you're seeing all of these team packages where, hey, if you get a team package, everything's black. Everything's just plain black. And then you're seeing even a lot of teams where they don't even have their last names and their jersey numbers on their back. It's just the team logo and that's it. There's no individuality. There's no flair. Sure, it's great for, promoting the team identity, but there's no room for like individualism there. And seeing how, that kind of gave way for all of these different companies now. And it's not just Project, it's not just Hormesis. I mean, you also have like Kyle Spica and Mouse have Tiger Wear. You've got all of these other headband companies that have, like these smaller, more local manufacturers that are doing their own thing. And suddenly, there's a lot more people just kind of showing off their own style and their own flair. And it's really great to see like that brought back into the scene because I mean the sport's called paintball. We're shooting at each other with these blobs full of paint, and why are we wanting everything to just be plain black on black? Like that makes no sense to me at all,
Yeah, it's interesting, right? And I feel like it kind of got pushed that way and just it got lost a little bit. I mean, it's funny enough, with Bunkerfest coming back, the coolest thing in the whole era of early 2000s Texas paintball like had to be the Bunkerfest like North versus South All-Star game. And specifically the first one because it was mostly all Texas players. The second one got a lot of pros came in. It was a little funky. So that was at Bunkerfest 2 and the North versus South game. And I saw a picture of it recently, and like we're all there, this big lineup. I forgot the rosters were probably like 12 on 12, and like I look ridiculous because I have a bright pink like cowboy bandana and a bright pink headband on. But the only reason I had that is because like amongst the other BKT guys, like the other colors were like chosen at the time. Like it wasn't like, oh, like you have this dope headband and that's tight. I want that too. It was literally like, all right, like how can I stand out on the field? And that was just the norm. And so I look at this photo and I cringe because I look ridiculous, but at the same time, like that's at the time, like everyone was like, that's dope. Like you're the pink guy, and I think that's some of that's coming back in the sport. So it's just and I hope, I hope Bunkerfest at some point as it grows brings back that North versus South All-Star game because that honestly was like the most intense, like crazy match where I mean I think it was Saturday afternoon, but every single person that played that tournament stayed for that match and just hundreds of people, no bleachers, so just standing 20 people deep all the way around this thing screaming and yelling, and it was just kinda like almost playing in like a World Cup type atmosphere, but at Bunkerfest. So I think you could get that again where if you did Dallas first, Houston or Dallas first, Dallas and Houston versus San Antonio and Austin or something like that, like you could really get a pretty awesome match with a lot of really good paintball players 'cause, back then, the only pro players there were, I think, Colt, Rich Gerald, and at the time, like, that was it on the field. I don't even know if Colt was playing pro at the time. He probably no, he wasn't playing on Storm. And then Dave Baines was playing in Max Lundquist. Like, each team got one pro that was there. But nowadays, like, hell, it'd probably be all pros. We would probably need to make a rule to where you could only have X amount so you could give some up and coming
Mm.
like players an opportunity. But that's something that I hope Chris looks into because that's to me like the one of the coolest moments in Texas paintball Like I still have my jersey. I still have the trophy somewhere, and it's something that he should bring back because it was cool.
I can tell you it's been heavily requested. And
Okay.
he's definitely trying to figure out how to bring it back. Eventually, I don't know if it'll be in for this first event or even this first year, but it's
Hmm.
been an often requested thing. And I mean, I'd be down. Like that sounds like a great
For
time,
sure.
you know. So,
Hmm.
with the project brand, what have been some goals that you've been wanting to achieve, or maybe that you've already achieved? And what are some more goals that you have for the future?
Um, I would say, I mean, we're achieving goals. It seems almost like monthly now. I think for us, it's like it's doing more but staying true to ourselves, right? And so that takes, at first we would have a couple, like we'd do a long sleeve, and then it'd be a couple months we would do another thing. Um, and but at the same time we would have like, you know, 80 t-shirts available, and then all of a sudden like there's 400 people trying to buy 80 t-shirts, and it's like, well, that's sweet because it sells out in a second, but now I have 300 and something people that didn't get what they wanted. But at the same time, I don't want to sell 400 t-shirts because it's no longer unique and kind of the stuff I spoke on earlier. So the way to kind of rectify that is we wanted to ramp up the amount we're like drops we're doing of offering more products more frequently, to help kind of grow and get more people, part of this kind of ecosystem that we're shooting for, in this community. So we're hitting that goal because it does seem like we're doing a lot more frequently. So like we have been doing stuff. We have, a lot of stuff in the can right now to where we almost, it was just us working harder, right, to get it all. But like I got my we have like we have drops ready to go, I guess the best way. For the longest time we were waiting for something to come in to be able to do it. So we're now it's like we got a garage full of different things that we can do at any moment. We're just kind of waiting for the right time to time it correctly. So that's a goal that we've achieved, right? Of being able to not be waiting so much and being able to create more. Um, a goal of to work with multiple manufacturers and not be, um, a brand that's just like they just make this stuff, or they just make that stuff. Um, that's great. We have a goal of manufacturing more of our own stuff, right? So we're not, be able to kind of do that. And down the road, we'd like to get there. But it's also a fine line because I don't want to get in direct competition with people we're partnering with, because that to me is like a big part of the enjoyment of taking what we think is some of the best products, and being able to collaborate with them, right? Um, and I don't know how this will go or whatever, but if we just start making a bunch of our own stuff, some of those other people might say, "Hey, like I don't want you making a project version of our product because you're taking business from us over here." So it's tough, right, to balance that because it is to us like we really do like the collaborative process. So we'll see how it goes, but I'd like the company to continue to grow. But I guess my biggest goal moving forward is to continue to grow the company without losing, what it means to us and to our customers. To continue to make the right decisions, to continue to not, um, chase money rather than what the brand is and what it means to us. Every time we do a drop now, on Shopify, it says, what was left behind in the shopping cart, right? So it's like, you sold this much, often will say something like, you sold $20,000 and $78,000 were left behind in the shopping cart, right? So that means that we could have sold 100,000 that day if we had quantities to do that. So that always is someone who's been involved in business for over a decade now. It's kind of like, oh, that's a terrible business decision. Why am I not getting the 90 grand when I could? But at the same time, it's staying true to what we think the brand is and what we want it to be. Because yeah, we could make the $90,000 that one time, and then I could make it the next time, but I believe we'll lose what we stand for and what we are, our identity in that process, and then things will start to fade. And that the real thing for us is like, wanting to hold the identity of what project is and what the individuality and kind of what it is. So that's my biggest goal, to grow without losing our identity.
Well, it's fun to see all of these different drops coming on. I mean, just every time I check the project website, it seems like there's new stuff on the sold out page that I never quite am lucky enough to get my hands on for some of it. But there's a lot more like diversity I'm seeing in the products. Like I remember it was for a while, it was really just that long sleeve and then just the original run of Project G's. And now you can almost, I mean, you actually can just outfit yourself entirely, minus like some of the soft goods stuff with just project gear. I mean, you've got the air tanks, you've got markers, you've got, the headbands, the pants, and you've got pod packs as well. So it's cool to see more and more of like the different kinds of products coming out. So do you have like anything upcoming on the horizon for projects? So obviously we've heard news about markers in store for next year, but do you have any things that you can hint towards?
Yeah, a couple things. I think up next is we did our hoodie release maybe a month ago, a couple weeks ago, and it honestly did extremely well. And it was one of these little things of regret of like we didn't know how well it was going to do, and so many people weren't able to get one, and we're trying to rectify it. And the design we really liked, so we kind of went back and like, how do we do this quickly enough too? And so we just figured out like, well, we can do different colors of the same hoodies, right? And not really kind of lose making someone's purchase less, important. So I think the next thing, I just picked them up today. So like we have um, new hoodies. I think this will come out next week, but I think we have like 4 or 5 like different colors of these guys. And then I think another cool thing is that we have these are gonna come on them now. I think it's probably hard to see, but they're like kind of a PVC
Mhm.
that probably is like project logos and that. So the hoodies are coming next on the kind of like a small side. We have new powerhouse rags that are like really really cool. That we're kind of working on. They just need to be anodized to go. And there's not going to be a lot of them, and they're not like anything you've really seen. Maybe closest to like the infamous Skull Daddy rag, and so and it's something It was the initial reg we wanted to do before the grenade reg that we did recently, and it was our first design, but it was so difficult to bring to life that the other one got made first. But Carl over at Powerhouse, he figured it out, and so we're really stoked on that. Um, so that's kind of the next kind of like pretty cool one, and then we have some milled markers in the works. We have designs completed on 3 different platforms, um, and I will say that one of them, we're hoping all 3 get made in 2023. Um, but at a minimum, one is going to get made. Like, yeah, and I would say I'm fairly confident all 3 might get made. But with delays and supply chains and all this stuff, it's really hard to confirm things these days. But I am one is going to get made, and I've seen the renders, all that kind of stuff, as far as like our design being brought to life, and it's cool. Like people are gonna be really really excited for it. So that's gonna be coming out, and before that, we've done this little thing. If you're familiar with our especially our Project G release, and even like the TM40 release, like um, they're really hard to get, and the Project G especially. And this next release is going to be probably on the similar lines of the Project G. And so what we did is that we wanted to kind of do some cool things to give people access to kind of lock in first right to buy this next milled marker. And so we've done some cool anodized guns. Me and Archie really kind of fell in love with like the anodizing process in the world. It's just like it's beautiful art, and there's so many really talented people in our industry that do it. So it's been really cool to like work with these different companies with Arc and Outlaw and Aesthetic. And So we've been selling some of these really cool like anodized guns recently. And what we did with that is that we said, hey, we're going to take 35. So our next run of Project Milled markers is going to be a limited run of 200. So 200
Mm.
only. So what we did was like, hey, we're going to do 35. We're going to sell 35 guns of like anodized guns and stuff. And if you get a hold of one of these anodized guns, you will guarantee your right to purchase, get in line for one of these 200 milled markers. So far we've done the majority of those. With some different, we did anodized LV2s. Tonight we did the anodized TM40s. But what we have left is that there's 10 more spots, and we have 10 screen printed LV2s, like it's a project print, like a
Mm.
PGA anno, on 10 of them, and we have them in hand. And so those will qualify for the last 10 spots to lock in for the milled marker, 10 of the 35. And we'll probably sell those here in a week or two. Sometimes like we have them in hand, and so they're pretty cool. Like it's a design that I don't think people have done before. Nick Laval created it. As far as there's two sides of the marker. There's the left half and the right, and it's kind of a duality type of design. So we're nice, excited to show that off, but those will also count for the last 10 spots. So it's a 1 of 10 gun, and it's going to be one of the last spots. So that's probably the big one coming up that I think people are going to be fighting over.
Well, it sounds like a lot of great things are on the horizon for 2023 for Project. It's been awesome to see, like, especially the Project Milled stuff. Like, I think all the time I'm seeing lots of these different, like, Project Gs and Project TM40s just making their appearances on the field. And now you're going to be adding LV2s and some other platforms as well for next year. Is going to be great to see. So this next question is sponsored by FUAthletics. My buddy Thomas, who's also on the Titans. Go to thefuathletics.com. Use code inthepits25 for 25% off your order. So looking at your career up to now in paintball, and that could be playing, coaching, with Project, anything. What has been your single favorite moment in your career?
So I'll give you both, and I think I guess I said the same thing on another interview, but I guess to be honest, it's got to be the same story, right? It's my favorite moment. So as a player, it was 2007 Huntington Beach Finals against Aftermath. And I actually, like, if anyone wants to watch those, it's a best of 3, so there's 2 games. They're on my Instagram account. I think I posted them, sometime in the past couple of years, and I don't post often on Instagram, so you can go by and it's shoddy video. It's what we had at the time, but you can watch those two matches, and they were just super. Huntington Beach was just a really special event. It's most similar to what World Cup is now. And to be in the finals on the center court, and playing those, it's just stadium, 3-sided stadium seatings. Like, you can see it if you go to my Instagram and watch the videos, that the bleachers are just massive with people, and they had open. You didn't have to play the event. The foot traffic, surfers everywhere, all that kind of stuff. So that was my favorite player as a moment. Both of those games kind of came down to the wire to win that tournament, in San Diego against Aftermath, with the majority of the crowd rooting against us. Was kind of just a surreal moment. So as a player, that was that. And as a coach, winning World Cup in 2013 is always going to be one of those big moments that I'll never forget. But it was actually breaking through in 2019 in Philly is probably the one that I think for me was the most memorable and kind of biggest moment. And I think that's a little bit because, when we won World Cup in 2013, I came back, we had, in 2011 I coached, and we had this kind of this, like, okay, mediocre year. But in 2012, we were competitive. We won a 7-man event. And we go into 2013, we won Huntington Beach, that year, like one of the last Huntington Beach, and then we won World Cup. So, that, I had only been coaching for so long and had a fair amount of success early on. But then the drought from 2013 to 2019, I think that was a full, drought of
Mm.
so many third places and second places and so much heartbreak in that timeline to finally break through. And 2019 was just like this monkey off my back and this kind of this. It just made it all. I think the in this sport, the grind and the learning lessons from losing, and that's where the real beauty really lies, and the fact that it's so difficult, and especially at the pro level because so few teams win, and I'm sure there's people like like Dynasty, um, those guys have been winning since the jump, so I'm sure they have a different perspective from some other teams to where it's different from them or a lot of the Heat guys and those types of franchises. But I'm sure damage experiences a little bit this year. But after a drought for so long and so much heartbreak to finally break through, like it was a euphoric moment to say the least. And then obviously to do it again the very next tournament, it was just kind of an amazing thing.
Yeah, it's crazy whenever you have teams in the pro division that go on these massive runs, like Dynasty's run the last 2 years. Y'all's run in 2019 was awesome to see, but like even during those runs, you've got like pockets of where a team comes out of nowhere, like the Ironmen winning an event in Vegas of 2020.
Hmm.
Them coming up and winning that. And then Ironman making, I mean, I know they didn't win the event, but they made the finals I think it was in Sacramento this year. So you've got, like, it's already tough enough to win a tournament, but then to go on and win several over a short span it's truly special. And I'm wondering, like, how long is this dynasty run going to last? Because I know there's a lot of teams that are very, very hungry to knock them off their throne. I'm sure Damage is pretty close. I mean, winning in Dallas this year, and then of course everybody else trying to get there. Like it's and it makes it like even more crazy just to look back at the teams that have had these runs, like Dynasty's current run, like Impact's run a couple of years ago, where they won a whole slew of tournaments within like a 3-year span. And I'm wondering, like, are things like that going to keep happening, or is it going to be like more evenly spread out as we go on and as more and more talent gets fed into the league?
Yeah, it's really interesting. I mean, our sport has always been in these kind of pockets of runs or just a couple teams going back and forth at times. But it's just kind of been that way. With Dynasty and then the Russians and then Impact and then um, you know we had our little short-lived one and there's all these little things and it's one of these. I feel like it's very tight and competitive right now, and I think it
Mm.
just takes sometimes the confidence of winning and things kind of going your way a little bit for whatever reason. Things start rolling your direction, and the momentum in it allows you to kind of compete. But even like when Impact was going on that run, Heat was right on their shoulders, and they were trading off for a while, right? And I think we'll probably see something more similar to that. But right now, I feel like there's Impact's always going to be competitive, and Dynasty is going to continue to be competitive. And Heat, I think, is I think a lot of it will kind of go on how well Connor Kelly. I think that kid has a lot of potential. I think they're one piece away from like to to be a very, very like a competitive team. And not that they're not. I think they finished second in the series. I just feel like certain teams are maybe a little bit deeper than they are. So right now, Heat is reliant on a lot of their guys playing really well and no one getting injured. So as they add depth, they're going to be up there. I think Damage is a team that they just needed some momentum as well. They were in that long run. They get the win. Their ego takes over. They go 1-3 in Chicago. They get checked. They come back and they have a really good World Cup. Um, but I think honestly, like my perspective, I'm looking at them right now, and I think that team, their ego is probably their biggest challenge, right? So I think they kind of have this ebb and flow to them and stuff, and then honestly, I think our team is really very much right there as
Mm,
far as just not even like trying to just it's my team. We're of course we're in this competitive zone. It's like you look at we had our run. And then I think right now it's kind of like we get left out a lot of the conversations of the big teams and stuff often, and it's just like 2019, we were the best team, and then 2020, there's only two tournaments, and then we lost in the finals at World Cup to a like kind of a fluke of Jesse core sampling in the finals.
mm,
We're up on bodies in overtime in the finals. Like, so we very well could have won that tournament. And Archie didn't play that event; he was injured. And then 2021, as we had a pretty decent year, and then yeah, we were in the finals in Chicago, and then in the finals at World Cup again, and that was a finals that we were winning up points, about to go up 3 points, at a team kill, change the momentum of the whole thing. And I think that I don't know if that came down to overtime or not, but or I can't recall, but it was a back and forth match. So it's like that. And then that's, we lose Archie, we try to figure out the roster. We don't really have it, figured out at the early onset of last year. First event, we get this kind of ridiculous bracket because the Saints are a fifth tier team.
mm,
So we have Dynasty and Saints in our bracket. Um, and we're still trying to figure things out. Losing Archie's a huge piece. So we have a bad tournament and miss the cut. And then that gets us in a bracket for the next event where we have Dynasty, Damage, Infamous, I think maybe Diesel. So we get another just like ridiculous bracket to where we all go 2-2, and we missed the cut on a 1 point tiebreaker. And so does us, Dynasty, Damage. We're all tied at 2-2, and Damage made it on a 1 point tiebreaker. And it's one of these things that they go on to win the tournament, and people go on to be like, "Oh, Dynasty can't play blind layouts, and X Factor was terrible at the beginning of the year." But we were all tied. You could
mm,
say all three of us could have won that tournament. And so that's the beginning of last year. And then from there, it's just a third place, fourth place, and a match we really blew against the um, against Ironman. We should have been in the final. It was poorly coached, poorly executed. Um, and then we go, Impact, the fifth event where we beat them in the prelims. They beat us in a really close game in the quarters. And then World Cup was honestly a heartbreaker. That I feel like that's a tournament that we were destined to perform very well at, and that we were just handling it. Like I don't, our plus minus was extremely good. We had lost very few points. We were running two lines the whole time. We win our first game on Sunday, and kind of in absolute control. I don't know if we won by 5 or whatever it was, and
mm.
you go on and play Heat, and it's just a freak show of a match where the first point goes a full 16 minutes and a 2-on-2. Um, and that was just you don't see that, right? Like it's a 0-0 going into overtime, and um, I called a play out of the bag of tricks that honestly was potentially what would have been a defining moment of my coaching career of just on a field that was impossible to go to the snake. I wouldn't say impossible, but the probability was very slim that we went to their side of the field and snake off the break in overtime. But Colt's gun, malfunctioned off the break and goes on their side, and then but we still breakout works. Make the snake off the break, get up a body, 4-on-3. Billy crawls down, comes up. There's videos of it, but in slow motion, that are pretty actually fascinating to watch. But Billy bounces Ronnie 2 or 3 times from 50 snake to the tower in a tournament where we had really good paint and did not bounce people very often at all. And so what should have been a 4-on-2 in overtime to move on just turned into a staled out 4-on-3. And the end of the tournament, at the end of that clock, it looked like it was probably going to one-on-ones. We tried to make a play to win it up on bodies, and Ryan Moorhead at the same time made a play down on bodies. Was just um, one of the better plays I've ever seen to steal that match from us before it went to one-on-ones. So, and that's how our World Cup ended. So to me, our team is very competitive and right there on the cusp of of winning. And so, so those that's five teams I mentioned that could win any tournament. And I truly believe that. And then that's not to discredit the other 15 teams in the league that is also getting extremely competitive. So I don't know if I see a team going on a run. It's gonna be competitive.
Absolutely. It's gone from, I mean, at when the league expanded to 20 teams, those four teams that were brought in were New York Extreme, Scottsdale Elevation. I think it wasn't Aftermath. The ML Kings were an expansion team, and then there was one more team in there that I can't remember, but I don't think they're around anymore. Maybe they merged with Level or something like that.
Oh, it was
But
level.
it was Level. Okay. So those
I think.
teams then like it for a little while it seemed like the league was like a top 9, top 10, top 11, and then there was like the bottom rest of the teams. But now it's like a top 17, top 18, and bottom 2 or 3. And like anybody can
Yeah,
take games
it's
off of each
weird.
other.
Anybody can take games off of each other. I think the real thing was it's hard to. There's still a separation that I think some people forget about because people are like, oh, Revo could win a tournament. That level could
Mm,
be win a tournament, but there's there's a separation of winning in the quarterfinals and winning in the semis, and then there's a whole nother thing of winning in the finals that you often. I don't know how many teams have won in their first final. I know, like as X Factor, we lost our first final, and then the next event we won a final. And so it's when people are saying LVL could win any tournament. I think they're doing a good job, and while they could, I think there's still a separation of teams that know how to win, and that's a big separation. I think look at us. It's like even we've been in our last 2 or 3 finals, like we've, out of the last 3 finals, we've lost them all. Like it's very difficult to know how to win. And if you match up with Dynasty in the finals right now, and it's a tall task. Like it's much different to win a finals match than to win a game. There's other elements, and there's a lot of elements that people don't even realize as far as how much louder it is in a final. In the pro league, 90% of our matches are split deck. So what changes when you're playing a full single deck match? There's all these different things to where I think it's a stretch to say that any team can win or these 16 teams can win. I really do think right now only 5 teams really have a chance to win.
mm,
Um, but there's teams that have that can compete and can become finals teams. And then one day they could win. And I could be completely wrong, but it is a tall order to go win in a final when you haven't been in one in your career.
for sure. I mean, look at I mean, the Ironman made the finals this year, and then I think it was something that possibly Trent said that they just kind of let them. It was their first time in this final situation, and it just kind of got the better of them. But now that they've been in that situation, that younger roster, they'll be more ready for it. But
Yeah, they'll be more ready, but they also did it in a minor. And so a
mhm,
lot of those things I talked like the crowd noise and all that kind of stuff, um, that's something they will need to learn. And then the other one is I would be shocked if anyone wins a World Cup final before playing one before, because that is a completely different game of paintball. That is playing paintball and removing communication often, and you can't communicate out there. So a lot of it, like, it's kind of funny. The most important game of the year is almost a crapshoot of people like throwing haymakers at each other, and like audibles that our team relies on a lot off the break. I can't get those to my team. There's all these things
Mhm.
that like you gear up for the most important game of the year, and then a lot of it is just out the freaking door, and you have to have a different strategy going into it, and you have to learn how to do it. Um, because it's different. You'll see a lot more counterpunching, a lot more just absolutely how to thrive in the chaos, and that's why you see players like Greenspan, and some of these guys really excel in those World Cup finals, and it's because they can they understand the processing is quicker, and they can manipulate the meta of how a field should play and how to quickly do it and thrive in the chaos.
It's even more crazy that they mercied the finals. Like they've mercied their last two finals matches, and then they also mercied the semifinals match against Heat.
Yeah.
So like just the fact that that roster is able to mercy the best teams in the world, Damage, Heat, even in Chicago, mercying in the finals. So, yeah, it's I can't imagine trying to go up against a team like Dynasty, especially in the finals at World Cup, which y'all have matched up in the finals a couple of times now. So just having that gargantuan of a task. I mean, I guess for Damage winning in Dallas, it's probably a little bit of a relief that, they had to go up against Impact, who is, also no stranger to winning finals matches, but it seems like Dynasty is just something else right now.
Yeah, they got the momentum, and they believe, and that's a lot of it. And if that dynasty magic does exist, I'm not in a position to say that's all fugazi, because there definitely seems to be shit rolling their way more often than not.
For sure. Real quick, anybody who's with us in the chat, if you have something that you'd like to ask Ryan, go ahead and get your questions in the chat now. We'll get to them here in just a second. So Ryan, you gave us a pretty good recap of the year. One thing that I did want to ask you about, though, was this question about kind of your roster size throughout the year. So to start out the year, you did lose Archie, but then you also made several acquisitions. You picked up, or you more solidified Tom Guest. You added LJ Parrish. You added Sean Salcedo. You added Anthony Bowles, and then Cody Bayless was coming back from being healthy. So you started out the year in Florida with a 12-man roster, which is much larger than you're usually running. How did having all of those extra bodies change how you did things?
It sucked, in short. And how it happened was we had a lot of like both in 2021, like TJ Danner didn't play very much, and it's because he's coming off that multiple year injury. And then Rainey was also, had his back issues and didn't even know if he was going to play in 2022. And so we were having to kind of, and Cody had been injured, and we weren't sure how Cody was going to be, and we weren't expecting Cody to be ready. So the team, Shorty and Anthony played the end of 2021 with us, and so we're not going to just get rid of those guys, right? They did well, and so we carry them over. But then all of a sudden, we have all these guys coming back healthy from injury. We have Rainey's ready to go all of a sudden. TJ's ready to go. Cody's back. And obviously, we picked up LJ to kind of replace, some of what we're losing with Archie, and we have all these guys, and it just became very difficult when you have a lot of good players, how to get people in a rhythm and on the field. And my hats off to Dynasty because they're managing a similar size roster, um, but I think they do have more separation at some. They have some more role players, right? Young guys and stuff like that. Like they're able to kind of narrow it down pretty quick, and they stick to it. But as a coach, it's difficult to have that many people to get people in a rhythm. But then we start doing some. Jesse takes his break to focus on career. We got Cole it's really going to Philly where, I Shorty, because of my relationship with Infamous, Shorty's a great guy and a great player. We just didn't have a lot of room for him at the time, and I didn't like watching him kind of sit on the bench and not get the spins he deserves. So, I kind of somewhat brokered a relationship deal to let Shorty go play and start with Infamous. And so we moved him on, and then Anthony's going into his career, and so it wasn't really his focus wasn't able to be strictly on paintball. So Anthony kind of was whatever that situation happened. Jesse on his break. So and then all of a sudden, Colt it's COVID right before the tournament. And practice on Thursday, Cody tears his hamstring, and all of a sudden I'm looking at it, and we got 5 players, and I had just spent the previous 2 months thinning the roster after the first 2 events, and I'm like, oh, did I just make a big error in judgment? Um, to go, I went too far the wrong direction.
Mhm.
And it was just like, and Tom Guest couldn't play that tournament either. That was a tournament on the schedule he couldn't play. So we went from 12 players to 5 really quickly. But luckily, the team band together. They played a form of paintball to where you can go far, but you can't win, in my opinion. And I think that's where it kind of fizzled out in the semifinals for the squad. Similar to what I thought happened to AC Dallas throughout the original AC Dallas, like throughout the
Mhm.
end of their entirety of their um, run as a pro team of they ran too few guys. You can go far with 5 guys because you're getting all the reps, all that stuff, but you will fizzle based on becoming too scoutable because you get in a rhythm and you're too your energy is so much in turning points to really understand how to break that rhythm, and you just kind of gas out. So that's what happens to us in Philly. And then, after that, we get our squad back to a healthy number for Chicago and World Cup, where I think we had, and Sacramento, I think we had maybe 9, 10 is what I want, right? So
Mhm.
we in the rest of the season we kind of carried that. Um, in Sacramento, in Chicago, we did things differently where we had our 9-10, but we really focused on um, playing a smaller roster. Um, and, we got the results we got. At World Cup, we ran pretty much 2 lines the entire the event, and we were having a lot of success. Whether that would have continued on if we would have, continued and that heat overtime point, went our way. I don't know, but I felt that was the best we've ever where we had the entire team playing great, and able to really keep everyone really rested with what we were preparing to be a deep run. So we thought we were going to have to play 4 or 5 games on Sunday to win that tournament. So we just kind of knew from that we wanted to run a more guys and run a little bit deeper.
Yeah, and that Philly, not to mention, like you weren't there either. So that run that those
Yeah.
guys had was just was really good paintball from that really small roster.
For sure, yeah. I watched more tape in the hospital holding a 1-day-old baby in that
Mhm.
tournament than I've ever watched tape in my life. So luckily, if everyone's gone through the process of having a child, they sleep 3 days straight for the most part in the hospital. So I did nothing but watch paintball. So I still have I fall asleep at night and have dreams of the Philly layout and all the stuff. So for me, it was part of that regret of like, did I just screw up by thinning this roster to where we only have 5 players now, and I'm not even there to help. So
Mhm.
part of that was like, all right, I'm going to help as much as I can from this hospital bed, and all the nurses in this hospital probably think I'm a weird psychopath because they saw me uh, up all hours of the night with my laptop and like 200 pages of paper of layouts scouting out, which my wife actually went into labor as I was at the FedEx getting my layouts. So the only good thing I had is I actually got my 200 layouts
Mhm.
right before she went into labor. So it worked out.
And that's a hell of a situation right there.
Yeah.
But hopefully hopefully the future events will be that chaotic. And with the roster sizes, I mean, I know Rainey heading over to Damage, but then you made a huge pickup with Cody Mikowski. So Tell me a little bit more about like X Factor, where they kind of sit now, and what we're looking at in the near future. Either are there any more changes or additions coming as far as personnel, or even things like sponsorship agreements, things like that?
Um, the team where we have it's kind of like we're returning the team. Rainey won't be with us, but Code will, and I think I think Rainey is. I don't think anyone has to go to say he's not one of the best players in the league, but I think Cody. So of course we lose something by losing Rainey, but I think Cody is we're gaining something that we were deficient at, as a little bit of some more field general, someone that's another elite off the break shooter, elite gunfighter. I think he just makes us a little bit more deficient. It rounds us out a bit more, right? Where I think you're not gonna, there's not a bunch of Rainies, right? So you're not gonna sit there like, oh, we lost Rainey, let me replace Rainey with. I look around, and it's like with Rainey. So it's not one of those. But I think what we have is a very dangerous situation to where now I can put Cody and TJ and Colt on the field as gunfighting pillars, and then I'm able to mix in Billy, Meter, LJ, Jesse, all sorts of people as just weapon. And then I have Tom that if you have, like that is just if you don't watch World Cup, like he was I think Oliver wound up kind of perfecting that center of how to finesse it and do that kind of stuff. But Tom is just a absolute force up there and had just an amazing tournament. So it's like to me, like in all facets of the game, like we are often too deep right now of as far as two players. Like someone gets hurt, like I'm not even like all that concerned because I have a next guy up all over the place to where I think we're a difficult team to play against. And I think it was when Archie, me and Archie obviously we talk all the time. When he first went to Dynasty, he kind of said something to me about like he's like, you realize that if me, Marcelo, and Greenspan on the field, even if we're in a 3-on-5, how hard it is to beat us. And he kind of said that to me, and I was like, oh shit, like he's kind of right. That you get it, and I'm looking at it now that we're kind of getting into that mode of like I look at a roster and it's like, well, shit. Like we have guys that are just going to be very difficult to get off the field and threats all over the place. So I'm as majorly confident going into this season that we have the right squad to do it, and it's very motivated.
Well, we're looking forward to seeing how X Factor is able to perform this upcoming season. We have we're excited to see X Factor, return to all of these finals fields and get more trophies and medals to their name, because they're definitely deserving of it. And I think y'all squad now is going to be set up to really do some damage this season. So, real quick, looking at the chat for questions, we got one question from Leo on the Titans. His question is, do you prefer a player that is great at one job or a player that is good at several jobs?
I think there's I probably need a little bit more clarification on the question to answer it 100% correctly. I think if they got to be good at all jobs, right? If you want someone that's great at something but has deficiencies, like that can't work at our level. That you got to be good at everything and great at something. But if it's talking about someone who's like, a snake player and they're a great snake player, but they can't play the three as well or something like that, then there's a spot on the field for those types of guys. But then you also need like your 5 tool players, like a Meter or a Colt, or we have a few of them that they can play the front spot, but they can play the 2, they can play the back spot. Like those, you need those types of guys on your team that they can kind of do everything. Those are important components as well, and it helps you be less scoutable.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, especially with the ones, I think if you have a one who's like, hey, he's a he's great at getting in the snake. He's great at crawling down and shooting a lot of people. Like, I mean, there's always going to be spots for guys like that you're just like, hey, this guy's in and he's going to account for 2 or 3 bodies or sometimes even more. So let's see. Next question is also from Leo. He's asking, do you think you will ever make your way back to playing speedball tournaments?
Oh, I don't know. I don't know about that. I think for me, it is, I've obviously fielded, quite a few requests, especially because my ranking now over is so low. But for me, it's like there's only so much time, like that I can take away from my family, and commit to paintball and do so much of it, right? We're like, X Factor is like, I'm paid to do a job, and it's a passion, right? And I have to everything first. I have to make sure X Factor gets everything they can need, right? So that's my first priority. And then secondly, like, for me, it's like the 10-man stuff. Like I love, and it's like I've been part of. I'm a fixture on that 10-man squad as far as like I played all of them with Infamous since the ICPL started. Um, and I would have to, I don't have more to give, I guess the best way to put it. So for me to take another weekend to play a speedball tournament, I'm either taking that away from my family or taking a practice off from X Factor or taking a 10-man off from Infamous, and I just don't have the time to do it. So it would take a lot for me to be able to do it, although I would enjoy it, to do it. And at times I'm able to get out and play some speedball with X Factor. There was times in practices last year that I would play like the first day on the layout against the team we were scrimmaging, to try to get just increase my rate of understanding the layout a little bit faster. But there's pros and cons too, because then I won't be doing that more than likely this season, just because we only have 1 weekend on the layout. There's gives and takes there, right? But so yeah, the short answer is probably not, unless it would really lined up. Um, yeah, and same thing. It's like I love, when I came in to coach the Titans, it's like I had in my head this idea of like I really want to get involved with a divisional program and give back to the community and all this kind of stuff. And I really like it is something like deep down I want to do. But once I started to do it and looked at the scheduling and how it all works out, I just can't and do everything else that I'm, 10 man is for me, right? That's what gives me my passion of playing, and X Factor is for X Factor. And after that, to add anything else on, even though it pains me because I do want to do clinics and help divisional teams and all that stuff, like I can't take more away from my family because then I'm doing a disservice to them. So I guess long story short, I'm pulled.
Well, it definitely takes a lot, and especially as much as you're already involved with a pro team that is, flying out to all of these events. But we sometimes joke that we're like, oh, we're D3, and we look at the PB leagues and, oh, Ryan Brand's got D3 points, we could technically have him. And then like if there's like one of those Bunker Fest or XCPL events that allow you to have a pro, it's like, oh, we can have Ryan Brand, and we could maybe see if Colt Roberts is free. So we joke about that sometimes. But yeah, you're doing absolutely a ton for just San Antonio paintball, just through your involvement with X Factor. So if that, the stars ever align, which, not saying they won't in the future, it'd be cool to see you kind of make your return as a speedball player. So we got, let's see, one last question from Chris Isaacs. He's asking if you remember back in, he thinks it was 2011, Texas Aggression hosted an open event at the Brownsville Sports Complex that you guys competed in. And then he says his team won 1 point, and then your team ended up walking away $3,000 richer afterwards.
That's really interesting, because I was thinking, when's the last time I played a speedball tournament, and I think that was it. And that was kind of an interesting one. It's a kind of a funny story. Is we were they had an open tournament, which there just isn't that many of them, with a guaranteed cash prize, and I forgot it. Real last minute we put it together, and I think maybe it's like me, Colt, Archie, maybe Grayson, and then we brought I think as a sixth player, maybe even as a fifth player. I think Brandon Linaldi back then when he was real young and kind of like practicing us for a little bit. I think it was the five of us, and we drove down there to Brownsville, and it's especially from Austin, it's a bit of a haul to get down there. I don't know, like 6 hours or something, but it was a $3,000 guaranteed cash prize, and I think at the time we're like, oh, let's go get this money and have some fun. So we drove down there and we parked the car. We pull up the next morning, and then all of a sudden, we didn't tell anybody we were really going. Other than like we cleared it with the league, we registered, but we weren't going to publicize it because we didn't want to deter and hurt the promoter, the turnout of any other teams. Not saying teams wouldn't sign up because they're scared. I don't know, but you know how it is sometimes. I'm sure some team would have been like, "I'm not going to waste my money. These guys are coming down here." Um, and mind you, I think it was 3 pros, myself, like very much retired at the time, and a Division 3 guy, or something at the time. So it wasn't like we're bringing the full X Factor squad. But so we parked the car, and all of a sudden, Mark Johnson pulls up next to us with Texas Storm, and the look on their eyes was like, "Fuck!" And honestly, like for us too, it was kind of like, "Shit!" Like we both made this, and for them, they drove like from like Oklahoma and Dallas, all the way. That's a big ass drive. And I think it was like for first place, it was $3,000, and for like second prize, it was like loaders. Like it was a big disparity of prize. And so we played that event, and it was fun. We beat Storm the 2 times we played them, and all the teams that come up from Mexico, and then the Valley teams, like everyone was very fun and welcoming. It was a great event, but we definitely I think the other funny thing to remind me is that when we did the award ceremony, um, they like rather than a check or anything like that, they literally like put $3,000 in a pot, and then they like handed it to us in front of everybody else. And like in some of these teams are like, came over the border. Like we don't know a lot of these people, and it's like, oh shit. And so we literally like hightailed it out of there. And even the promoter's like, "It's their money. You can rob them on the way out or something." And it was just like one of these things that I just remember, like, Colt, like, literally, like, driving with, like, a gun under his, like, seat and all this stuff, like, let's get the hell out of town. But it was a really fun event. That was my last speedball tournament. So to get me out of retirement on speedball field, you'll have to top that.
I love it. All right, so we're
and Mark
wrapping
Johnson, I hope you enjoy your loader. I hope you still have it, Mark Johnson. Yeah.
And that's awesome. All right, so we're wrapping up our show here. Thank you all in the chat so much for being on. Ryan, I want to thank you for your time. I've got one last question for you. So this is one that I ask everybody, and this is brought to us by Get That Shot. Message him on Facebook or Instagram if you need media coverage at Bunkerfest or at NXL. He's going to be at the full series for both. So, Ryan, are there any Texas-based either teams, players, brands, projects, anybody in Texas involved in the paintball scene that have caught your attention lately? Who does the rest of Texas need to know about?
Well, I mean, there's a lot, right? And I think I watched you ask this Archie the same question, and it's kind of like, our laser focus is so much at the upper levels, and just like I said, it's hard for me to get out to the USXBL. So it's like I don't know as much as probably the people that are out of the fit as much, but like for me, looking at it, like coming onto the pro scene, like I feel like Marky Franz, it's really impressive. Like I've watched that kid since he was like a little, tiny guy to where he is in his cerebral way he plays the game. It's really I'm excited to see him out there and kind of get his due. And then a couple others, like just looking at that team, like Ty Bateman, he had his small run with our team, and he maybe wasn't 100% ready there, and I think a mistake of ours was kind of bringing him and Desmond at the same time and having to split our attention, and it got a little like clicky and stuff. But I'm excited for Ty to kind of get his next shot, and probably a very much a justified one. And then also really happy for Jared Sherman, who's a guy that I competed against back in those 2000 early tournaments, right? And for him to be chasing this dream for however long and doing what he had to do in his road to get to the pros is, where, with, I think maybe it was on Diesel a year or two ago, where he just paid money and rode the bench the whole time, needed an opportunity to now, coming in and, I think he had a really big event for Notorious and towards the maybe Chicago, Sacramento, and I'm just really happy for Jared, dude. He's gone the long run, and he's kind of stayed true to the game, and he's gonna get a shot. So I'm really happy for him.
Yeah, I'm pretty close with a lot of those guys that are on that team. 2 years ago, or maybe no, I guess it's closer to 3 years ago, at the end of September of 2020. And I tell this story a couple of times, but we submitted a line to the Houston USXBL in D4. And on that line in D4 was myself, Dylan Strickland, Paul Hubert, Renee, and Jared. All were all on that line. And so like you have the stacked D4 line. All of these guys were playing D4 in 2020. And then 2021, they jump up to play D2. They win it. 2022, they jump up to semi-pro and they play it. Like just 2 years ago, these guys are playing D4 and D3. So for them to be working so hard for so long, and then like they finally make the jump and they just kill it. It's great to see. So really proud of those guys.
Absolutely.
So everybody, I think that about does it for our show. Ryan, do you have any last shout outs or things you'd like to say before we sign off?
Yeah, I mean, just kind of a shout out to everybody in Texas, and really, taking what, we started with Alex and kind of, back in 2004 or 5 or whatever, and kind of pushing the sport forward a little bit. And now it's just being on a completely different level at this point. And, teams everywhere, guys going pro everywhere, guys just, it's just really cool. I mean, I think when I grew up, Texas was not the hotbed of paintball and couldn't even be considered, in the conversation. For now, to be producing, a, like the podium of NXL events, like so much Texas success is pretty awesome. That we're just, so I think to me, that is a group collective effort from the old school guys all the way up, and it's just awesome to see. So, you know, thank all our sponsors. You asked Robin sponsor changes. The answer is no, because they've been great to us forever, and we probably have the longest relationship on the roster for most of our sponsors. As far as their teams, and then obviously to Alex, for he allows me and all of us on X Factor the ability to kind of chase our dreams and kind of live them out, and has for um, you know almost 20 years now. So that's kind of without him, I'm not doing this interview. I'd be long done with the sport, I would think, unfortunately.
Sure. I mean, there's a reason why he's the godfather of Texas paintball. So everybody in the chat, thank you so much for tuning in. Be sure to go follow Ryan. That's at RyeBrand on Instagram. Also follow X Factor at XFactorPB. What other guests would y'all like to see on the show? Be sure to leave a comment down below. While you're at it, hit that subscribe button. The show goes live weekly here on twitch.tv/inthepitspaintballpodcast. Recordings are posted to YouTube, Amazon, Apple Podcasts, and Spotify the next day. Want to give a quick shout out to my partners and sponsors, FUAthletics, Get That Shot, Paintball Kumite. Also, one that I didn't mention earlier was Compete, which is Jell Stewart's brand. Be sure to message him for any of your soft goods. Use In The Pits for 10% off of your order. And then also shout out to Hustletown Paintball. So y'all, thank you so much for tuning in. See you guys next week for episode 31. We will have Kenneth Matthew and Rob Moore of Kinetic Paintball. They'll be coming on to talk about their new products that they've just released. So Ryan, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.